Welcome back to a brand new episode of Blockade Who Games, where I have beaten yet another game and I have plenty of thoughts to share with you. Today I'll be talking about probably one of my favorite anime-inspired video games that was released just a few months ago with One Piece Odyssey. One Piece Odyssey released earlier this year in January, giving us a unique game adaptation of the hit anime series with a turn-based role-playing game with similarities to the Monster Hunter Stories 2 game with the rock, paper, scissors style combat. But just like Chopper early on in the anime who could not hide his body worth a shit, One Piece Odyssey struggles at times to hide its flaws. The flaws though are not enough to completely ruin this game, and unlike Brook, this game has a fully fleshed out combat and a decent story that kept me playing throughout my entire 40 hours of gameplay. Okay, I will cut it out with all of these puns. One Piece Odyssey does not reinvent the wheel when it pertains to the turn-based RPG, but the One Piece charm can be felt from start to finish with the voice acting, the return of familiar famous locations from the series, and all of the charm of each character is perfectly written to fully immerse you into the world that comes straight from the anime. One Piece Odyssey is not a typical beat-em-up fighting game like most anime video game adaptations and features a fun battle system, a semi-original story, but does have some repetitive flaws similar to Zoro and his ability to get lost just at the wrong time. A running gag with most anime-adapted video games is that most of them are fighting-based video games, and 90% of them just recreate the original story from the anime or manga into the video game. One Piece Odyssey, though, thankfully does not go down that same path and instead develops its own original story while still, to a certain degree, holding on to that original story at times. One Piece Odyssey takes place before the Wano Country story arc, so you have to have read a majority of the series or watched the anime to fully enjoy the game, but it is not required. One Piece Odyssey features all of the Straw Hat Pirates, and all of them are playable throughout the game, with some of them not appearing playable till later in the game. Just like any filler arc in One Piece, the story takes place after the crew crash lands on a mysterious island called Wayford, where there are very few inhabitants. After the crew manages to regroup from being separated, they have almost all of their powers taken away by Lim, who scatters their many abilities into cubes and are scattered across the island and other areas throughout the game, and most of their abilities that have been captured by Colossus on the island. Once Lim realizes they are not the same type of pirate she has run into before, and she agrees to help them get their abilities back, Luffy and the Straw Hat Gang also work alongside Audio, who is a wandering explorer that currently resides on the island and needs help taking down powerful Colossus enemies so they can get their memories back. But there seems to be an ulterior motive behind what Audio is doing, and we'll learn about that a little later on. For Luffy and the Straw Hat Gang to get back their abilities, they have to travel to Memoria, which is completely built from the crew's memories. This is where the still hanging on to the original story comes into play, as Memoria features several previous locations from the anime and manga. You will travel to Arabasta Kingdom, Water 7, Anise Lobby, Marineford, and Dressrosa, where you will encounter familiar friends and foes. As you go through each of these Memoria locations, you will unlock the abilities of Luffy and the rest of the Straw Hat Gang and take down the Colossus who hold the memory cubes. Though the Straw Hat Gang was not aware that Audio and Lim have orchestrated this to use them to help defeat the Colossus, so Audio could access the Divine Breath, which is a powerful weather-based weapon that he plans to use on the world government to get revenge on those who have killed his tribe, destroy the storm that is surrounding Wayford, and get his tribe back together. Lim, though, is torn as she becomes friends with the Straw Hat Gang and realizes that they will die because of what she has helped cause, because the Marines and world government have activated a buster call on the island, which will kill everyone and destroy the island completely. The Straw Hat Gang fights to stop Audio, who is using the Divine Breath to destroy several buster call ships, and Audio wants his revenge and wants to get his people back on Wayford and does not care who gets hurt in the process, including himself, which is why Lim wants to stop him so bad, because she wants him to live. Luffy and the Straw Hat Gang are able to stop Audio with the help of Lim, and though Audio's goals were not met, they were able to save the island and they were able to stop the Buster Call from happening and stop the Divine Breath from destroying everything. And now, with all that being said and done, the Luffy and the Straw Hat Gang have returned all their powers back to them, and the Sunny is back up and running, and they're finally going to get back out on the sea. One Piece Odyssey's gameplay is what makes the game fun and enjoyable and kept me interested through my entire 40 hours of play, with some disappointments along the way that we can get to a little bit later. One Piece Odyssey is a turn-based RPG gameplay that uses a rock, paper, scissors style combat where characters and enemies are rather a power, speed, or technique-based fighter. Power is stronger than speed, speed is stronger than technique, and technique is stronger than power. This adds an element of strategy as you will have to move around characters and choose the right strategy to survive combat. The battle takes place in an open field where your 4 playable characters are separated out around the area with multiple enemies scattered about. You can change out your characters at any point and move the right characters into place to do the best damage and to strategize how you're going to take down enemies and keep yours from being killed. Each character has a multitude of attacks and techniques that can be pulled from throughout the game, and you unlock more and more as you unlock memories and defeat past enemies. Combat is the biggest part of One Piece Odyssey, and you will have to use a variety of different things to help in combat, like food, healing items, and even throwable items that Usopp can create to help decrease different stat buffs and nerfs that can make combat easier. There are a variety of things to switch up the gameplay, and you will also have to use multiple characters in different situations to survive. Chopper is more of a healer, Usopp's more of a long-range attacker, Luffy does a lot of heavy damage, Zolo does a lot of heavy damage, and you kind of get the point. Now, combat is not the only part of the game, as you will also have to travel around the map and talk with NPCs, gather material, and find treasure that are scattered across the map. You also have to use the special abilities of each character to make your way through dungeons. Luffy can reach high up places, Zoro can destroy steel doors, and Chopper can enter very small spaces. And of course, Frankie can build bridges, later on when you get him. These difficult character abilities will have to be used interchangeably throughout the 9 chapters to be able to get everything you need on the map and to solve all the puzzles. There are also different puzzles throughout the game that must be solved to further your progression during the story, and puzzles are probably my favorite thing in games, and I like the puzzles in One Piece Odyssey. They were not too complex, but complex enough that it required some strategy. And then for me, my personal favorite feature that was included into the gameplay of One Piece Odyssey is that all characters get experience points no matter what. This makes it a lot easier if I don't necessarily want to use certain characters as often, or I'm not fond of their playstyle. They're still getting these levels and gaining experience points, so if I am ever forced to use them, they will do some decent combat at least. This makes it a little less frustrating to level up the characters, and it prepares you for boss battles, because there are certain boss battles that will definitely make you use certain characters, most specifically Doflamingo. Speaking of boss battles though, I was shocked at how awesome the boss battles were in One Piece Odyssey. There was a variety of boss battles that come from the manga and anime, like Crocodile, Kuzan, Doflamingo, and the most difficult of them all were the Colossus, which were unique to this game. They were created specifically for One Piece Odyssey. Each of the Colossus represent a different element type, from fire, wind, water and ice, and electric, and all of them are completely different in their own way, similar combat style, but their damage is so intense, and they are the most powerful enemies that I've faced in the game for a majority of the game, and I failed several times at defeating them because of how powerful they were and how they could easily one-shot everything. One Piece Odyssey though kept me entertained as I enjoyed every minute of the combat, but there are several disappointing flaws throughout the gameplay that made my experience not all amazing. Nobody likes to be disappointed when playing a video game, but at times it happens, and with One Piece Odyssey, I am thankful most of my experience was great, but the flaws of this game stuck out when they were present. One Piece Odyssey, when you are outside of the combat, it can become a boring chore to get through. One Piece Odyssey at times has quests that literally just ruin the flow of the game. An example of this is when you're asked to gather your crew, which makes you just run around the map and gather people just to return to where you just came from and then move on through the story. This happened too many times, and the game would force you to run around a mostly empty map with little bits of things to do. Not enough, though, to pique my interest, and I just felt forced to unnecessarily walk around and complete little tasks just to extend the time of the gameplay. I hate fetch quests. I seriously do, and I really do not like it when it happens more than one time in a game, and especially when it's back-to-back like it was in One Piece Odyssey. One Piece Odyssey is guilty of doing this multiple times, not just once or twice, not in just one map or another, but thrown throughout the entire game. And not even that, but it even decides to throw this in one more time right at the end of the game, which just felt pointless and just was an unnecessarily rotten cherry on the top of my sundae. They tried to give some reason though to why you have to go find these characters for the story, but with cutscenes you could have just done a much better job of doing this instead of forcing a fetching of characters quest. The other flaws that stood out to me was the increase in difficulty and drop in difficulty of the game. I don't mind if a game gets more difficult over time and it makes me have to get better at the game and learn more over time, but it felt like it would just randomly be thrown at you. An enemy at one point would be stronger than all of your characters and then would wipe out one by one with one shot, and then the next fight after that, it would be nothing. The game really did not flow in difficulty as most games do, because when you play most games, it's easy at the beginning, harder towards the end. But as I played One Piece Odyssey, it was so random that I could not really tell when I was going to face an enemy that was going to kill all my team, or if I was just going to wipe them out with no trouble. I will say that for a One Piece game, I did not have a super high expectation, as I know that most anime video game adaptations are not the best, but there were so many good qualities in One Piece Odyssey that I just hated when the flaws made their presence known, and they were way too large to just ignore. When it comes to my time with One Piece Odyssey, I can say that I was not left completely upset with my 40 hours of play. The flaws were very clear as I played the game, and it made it frustrating at times and took me out of the enjoyment that I was experiencing. The game's visuals were pretty much on point. They were amazing. It was exactly what I would hope for an anime-based game, and the gameplay, especially the combat, was the star and made this a blast to play. One Piece Odyssey is a hard game to convince people to play if they are not a fan of the series, as many of the enjoyable things that come from One Piece are the characters in the world of One Piece itself. I am a fan of the series, and I loved all of the ways that they honored the material and created an original story that kept me involved but also felt limited. The story focused heavily on past material to give the Straw Hat Gang busy work to do, while the original stuff took place in between and was not the star of the show. The original elements of One Piece Odyssey was unique, and it had potential, but I felt like it took a backseat to all of the time traveling that brought us back to these past stories we have already seen. Do not get me wrong, it was a fun time going back and fighting a bunch of past characters, and doing it in an RPG style game was also fun. And I wanted more out of the story though, as there was potential for great storytelling, and I felt like they could have added new characters outside of Lemon Audio to continue making the game feel a little bit more unique. 40 hours of One Piece Odyssey was just a little overkill due to some of the repetitive qualities, but I genuinely have plenty of good feelings about this game that I am left feeling satisfied with my time playing One Piece Odyssey. I am hopeful that with the future of One Piece games, we will continue to take some of these positives from One Piece Odyssey, because I feel that they did a great job of doing the gameplay itself. There is some DLC planned for the future, and I'm excited to see where that goes when it releases later this year, so I'll check that out too, and we'll see if it adds any more to this already decently fun game. If you like today's video, guys, you should subscribe to the channel because I make gaming content like this every single week, and I have a playlist of all the video games I've beaten that you can find in the description below. Now I want to turn it over to you all. What is your favorite anime-based video game? There are so many of them out there, and I am interested to hear what you guys have to say. Personally, my favorite anime-based video game is Naruto The Broken Bond, which was released on the Xbox 360. It is a perfect balance of beautiful graphics, awesome gameplay, and a perfect pacing. But One Piece Odyssey is not too far behind it, as I enjoyed this game a whole lot. Well guys, I'm going to get back to playing some more video games because they're not going to play themselves, and I have a whole bunch of new games to play right now with Redfall, Bramble, and Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and not too far from now is The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So I'm going to get back to playing games, and I'll see y'all next time.